UFC 284, Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris, as usual. Fight by fight breakdowns, fight by fight analysis. Specifically from that betting perspective, we want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Most importantly, make sure you share this video for anyone that is looking for solid UFC predictions. Of course, make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video and participate in the comments as well. For this UFC 284 pay-per-view, it's taking place in Australia. We have 13 fights overall, champ versus champ, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. We have eight fights on the main card, and we have eight fights on the prelims, I should say, and 5 fights on the main card. So let's get started with fight number 1 of our prelims. We're looking at Zubaira Tukhugov versus Elves Brenner. For Zubaira Tukhugov, his last fight was 2021. It's been a while since he fought. Beat Ricardo Ramos at that time. He's introduced as a striker. Pretty patient on the feet, going to fight from distance effectively, good in and out movement as well. Really good explosive striking speed, good counter punching too, so expect that from him. He has good power. In terms of his style of striking, he's mostly hands, so don't really expect any kicks out of him. Gets out of the way well of the kicks coming his way, so it's not like he doesn't have any IQ in terms of how to at least defend kicks. And again, I like his good consistent pressure. Doesn't really overcommit, good distance control, but at the same time has that good consistent pressure to him. And he has worked with Khabib in terms of his wrestling ability. Almost 2.5 takedowns per fight, 43% accuracy. That's going to speak to that. 100% takedown defense, almost more importantly, is going to speak to that as well. Taking on Elves Brenner, who is the newcomer on a 2-fight winning streak. He trains at Shoot the Box, so of course trains with guys like Charles Oliveira, Alan Nascimento as well. His stand-up pretty average from what I'm seeing, though. Not horrible by any means, but I don't think there's anything special there with the striking. Takedown game is effective enough from what I'm seeing. Good controlled aggression with that top game. Several wins via submission, unsurprisingly. Good ability to scramble, unsurprisingly as well. Takedown defense doesn't really seem to be amazing, though he is very active off of his back, again, unsurprisingly. So, he's somebody that's going to be very dangerous on the ground. Maybe not the strongest wrestler, but not quite someone you want to be on the ground with. But I feel good about Zubaira Tukhugov being able to defend that, right? Not allowing this fight to get to the ground, 100% takedown defense, stylistic preference of wanting to be a striker, wanting to make it a striking match. And I think that Tukhugov will be successful at that. On top of that, I think his striking is much better. I think he is more of a power threat, more dangerous on the feet. I don't really see this fight being an issue for him to keep it on the feet where he has those advantages. So I do think Zubaira Tukhugov is the smarter pick to get us started here.
Yeah, this is a good fight to start the card. I did some research on Elves Brenner. This guy looks like he has really good jiu-jitsu. Looks like he's looking to get some submissions. He doesn't have a knockout on his record as far as a knockout win since 2017. So when his competition got a bit better, he wasn't able to finish these guys with strikes. When I look at his striking, it's okay. It's nothing great. I don't see any danger in his striking. And I think in this fight, for him to pull out the victory, he's going to have to get some type of submission or get this to the mat. And as Harris indicated, Zubaira has really good takedown defense, works with those guys, so he should be really good in the grappling to avoid the submission. On the feet, I think Zubaira is the more dangerous striker. I think he's the better striker, has a really good hook, left hook, right hook. He has power. He has finishes in the UFC. So I think he's going to get this one. I think styles make this one an easier fight for Zubaira because he's fighting someone that needs to get it to the mat. And this Dagestan guy has good takedown defense. He'll be the one likely dictating where the fight goes. If anyone gets taken down, Tukhugov is likely going to take Brenner down. and if he wants to go that route. But I could see him keeping it on the feet, landing a heavy shot, getting a knockout because he does have power. So I like Zubaira in this spot.
Second fight of our prelims, we have Shane Young versus Blake Bilder. Shane Young, a two-fight losing streak, almost 2 years since his last fight. So again, a few fighters on this one that haven't fought in a while. He lost to Omar Morales at that time. That was in March 2021. Look for a lot of fakes and feints out of him, some switch stancing as well. Going to fight from distance, going to try to set up that attack. Good long jab to go along with it. He is going to have a 4-inch reach advantage, as we can see in this fight. Decent timing, good consistent pace, and a good controlled pressure about him as well. It has a bit of a clinch game, has a bit of a ground game. He has landed 3 takedowns total in 5 UFC fights. Nothing amazing, but it shows that he can land it here and there. One thing you want to note with him, just 56% takedown defense on paper, but numbers are a little bit skewed. His first fight in the UFC was against Alexander Volkanovski. Gave up 5 takedowns in that fight. He's only given up 2 takedowns since in 4 UFC fights. Taking on Blake Bilder, who is the undefeated newcomer from Dana White Contender Series, competed in August, so not too long ago. He was actually the underdog in that fight, so that is worth noting. Undefeated, like I mentioned, just over half of his wins via submission. 1 KO on his resume as well. He's a bit of a slow starter, sort of known to be a bit of a slow starter. He's not the most active striker. I mean, we see the small sample size, significant strikes landed per minute there. A lot of fighting from the outside. I don't think his striking is that good to that point. But to the point of his submission victories, he is a good grappler, good top control, good back control as well. He can also land takedowns. He's going to improve position on the ground, very controlled. Doesn't really have the most active ground and pound, which could be costly in today's UFC. You have to be careful with him because, of course, he will find those submission attempts. This is a little bit of a tricky fight. This is a close fight, hard to predict for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we don't know what level Bilder is at. He's a newcomer, hasn't really beaten anyone. Young has faced a much higher level of competition. I mentioned Young's takedown defense being as bad as not being as bad as his stats, I should say, but still gave up 2 takedowns in his last fight. So I can't say that his takedown defense is amazing by any means. But at the same time, I can't really say that Bilder's definitively better than him on the ground. It does look like Bilder has a bit more of a focal point of attack in terms of that ground game compared to Young. I do assume that Young is going to want to keep this fight on the feet. And on top of that, what makes it tricky is that I can't necessarily say that Bilder is great at landing takedowns. What I do know is that on the feet, Shane Young will be better. I do also believe that Shane Young will be able to keep most of this fight standing. I believe that Shane Young has the better movement, the better IQ on the feet as well. And these are things that should work out in his favor. Again, like I mentioned, Blake Bilder was the underdog in his last fight on Dana White Contender Series. So although he is undefeated, it's not like this is some sort of, hot prospect, right? We see him as an underdog in this fight as well. So I do think that Shane Young will be able to sort of have his way, keep it standing, be able to outperform on the feet, and get the decision in his favor.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man, because they're giving Blake Bilder a hard fight. Shane Young's fighting at home. Shane Young's a tough guy, man, but I haven't been impressed with this guy. I'll be honest with you guys, man. I haven't been impressed with what he brings to the cage. He's pretty basic in every area. His striking is his strong point. He wants to march you down, so that's his good thing going for him. He's a pressure guy, and eventually it takes its toll on the opponent. Bilder looks ready though, man. Bilder does have the grappling advantage in this fight, but I think that Bilder's gonna hurt him on the feet. I've seen some power from Bilder. I've seen a couple of fights where he dropped fighter with a hook, and at that point he's really good at getting the backs and then and trying to get the submission. So I like this guy. I think he can hold his own on the feet. I think on the mat he has a big advantage. So I'm gonna go with the underdog. I'm gonna go with Blake Bilder to pull out the win in his debut.
Third fight, we have Loma Lookboonmee versus Elise Reed. Loma Lookboonmee had a unanimous decision win over Denise Gomes back in September. She's a striker, Muay Thai background. She is from Thailand, so has that pure Muay Thai background. Her kicks are her primary weapon. Good calf kick, good push kicks as well. Pretty smooth on the feet in general with good striking IQ, and good timing with her striking as well. In the clinch, really good short range elbows. She's active with her knees. Again, that Muay Thai clinch style in those moments. She will sneak in that trip as well. In addition to the trip, she is good at landing takedowns in general, right? Almost two takedowns a fight, almost 50% accuracy. Solid takedown defense as well, 74%. If she is taken down, good scrambler, just good all around fighter. Not amazing in any one area, but a really strong striker with a decent ground game can go a long way in this women's strawweight division. Elise Reed, of course, unanimous decision win over Melissa Martinez. That was also in September. She's 2-2 in the UFC now. Has been a little bit inconsistent. Stylistically, she likes to keep it on the feet. She's patient, solid striking IQ, nice jab, well-timed right straight, good kicks as well, and good power with that timing that she has. One thing to note, of course, with Elise Reed, horrible takedown defense, just 50%. Doesn't really offer much defense against it. I'll keep the prediction part of this short, though. I like Loma Lookboonmee here. I think she's the better overall fighter. Her ground game, I think, is a lot better than Elise Reed's. I do think that Loma Lookboonmee should be able to land takedowns against Elise Reed, should the striking not go as expected. With respect to the striking, I do think that they're both capable, but I do think that Lookboonmee is the more pure striker, the better striker, in my opinion. I do think that they both can have moments, and like I said, if the striking is surprisingly, I should say, going in Elise Reed's favor, I think Loma Lookboonmee has that ability to resort to the ground game. And that advantage is just too much to ignore here. So Loma Lookboonmee, I understand the minus 280. I wish it was a little bit closer, of course, but I'm not too mad at it. I feel pretty comfortable picking Loma Lookboonmee here.
Yeah, Loma all day. This is finally a fighter close to her in height. It's gonna be a striking fight. Loma is one of the best strikers in the division. Really good Muay Thai. That front kick is deadly. She's gonna be able to do what she wants in this fight. Elise Reed is kind of a karate taekwondo type of style. Doesn't really have the ground game. Doesn't have the wrestling to take it to the mat. I think Loma might be able to get some takedowns in her with her ground game improving each fight. But I don't think she needs to take it there. I think she keeps it on the feet and just outclasses her in the striking. I think she's the far better striker. So I see Loma piecing her up. I'm really confident on this fight. Loma gets it done.
Fight number 4, the end of our early prelims. We have Jack Jenkins taking on Don Shainis. Jack Jenkins is a UFC newcomer. He competed in Dana White Contender Series in September. He's also on a 7-fight winning streak, pretty impressive. Switch stance fighter, good movement, good calf kick, pretty patient, pretty controlled as well. He has solid boxing from what I've seen, solid combinations, good striking IQ as well. Really good striking speed, especially good usage of that jab, mixes it up really well as well. And I've seen a bit of a ground game from him. I mean, we see again the small sample size with those large takedown numbers at 4 per at 65%. Good timing on the takedowns to that point. Good positional improvements, good consistent ground and pound, good top control as well. And I mean, he's been a champion, right? He's fought in championship rounds. He's been in round 4. He's been in round 5. In fights. I think he's like 32 years old, if I'm not mistaken. So, yes, only 12 professional fights, but expect him to be very poised in his debut and show up. He's taking on Don Shainis, who lost his debut to Sadiq Youssef. 8 of his 12 wins, I should say, are via KO, TKO. That's the first thing that you want to highlight. He is a good striker with good power. He wants to push the pressure. He wants to close distance. He has a solid ground IQ as well. Comes forward, looks for that takedown, has solid ground and pound, knows how to maintain top control. Again, that activity is good as well. Now, with Don Shainis' pace, naturally, he is going to slow down toward the end of the fight, but he can be explosive at any time. I don't think there's too much to read from Don Shainis's debut, other than the fact that he's just not a high level of fighter, like his opponent Sadiq Yusuf was. But that's not really saying much. I do think this is a close fight because both of these guys are capable on the feet. Also, because both of these guys are capable on the ground. The difference, however, is I like Jack Jenkins's poise. I like his control on the feet. I feel like he's going to be the fighter with better timing. I feel like he's going to be the fighter that's using an effective jab, that's using the calf kick effectively, that's moving well. Things like that. Just in much better control, scoring points a lot more efficiently on the feet. And I also think that Jack Jenkins will have a cardio advantage here, where Don Shainis may win that round one, but I can see Jack Jenkins taking over as we progress in this fight. So I like Jack Jenkins in the spot. I mean, of course, newcomer minus 360. That's a little intense for me, especially against a Don Shainis type of guy who has a almost 70% knockout ratio. Regardless of if I feel Don Shainis is this level or not, I'm definitely not betting on this. But in terms of making a pick, I'm picking Jack Jenkins to get it done.
Yeah, you got to go Jenkins in this spot. Don Shainis, that type of fighter, scrappy, really strong physically. He's really strong. Looking to get this to the mat. He's the type of guy that when it gets to the UFC level, these guys don't do well because they kind of thrive off that power, that explosiveness in the regionals or in the pre-UFC, where they can get away with that wrestling, that hard nosed fighting. It's a wild style. His punches are wild. He's a wild fighter. So it doesn't work when you get to the UFC because people are more technical and people will exploit his every movement he makes. When he jumps in for those crazy strikes, people in the UFC are going to pick those apart. And Jack Jenkins is that type of guy. He has really good boxing that he's going to be able to be the far better striker in this matchup. I do give Shainis the wrestling advantage, and I can see that being a problem. Just laying on top of him, winning a decision that way. But aside from that, if Jenkins can keep it upright for 2 rounds, he wins this fight because on the feet he's far better than Don Shainis. So I'm going to go with Jack Jenkins, the more skilled guy, and I think as long as he just avoids being blanketed for 2 rounds, he's definitely winning this fight.
All right, so let's move on to our regular prelims. We're going to start with fight number 5, of course, on this overall card. We're looking at Jamie Mullarkey versus Francisco Prado. Jamie Mullarkey had that split decision win over Michael Johnson in July. Very close fight at the time. He moves around a lot in the stand-up, decent jab, good head movement, good level changes as well. Very serviceable style of stand-up, especially nowadays. His striking is definitely getting better. His boxing combinations look improved. His calf kicks look better. His striking defense looks a little bit better as well. He was really testing his striking in his last fight. That fight didn't go to the ground at all, and he did outland Michael Johnson. So that is saying something. And Jamie Mullarkey has good power to go along with it. 10 of his 15 wins are via KO, TKO. We know that he has the wrestling. He's eventually going to shoot for takedowns. He's eventually going to try to take that clinch against the cage type of approach to the fight. He averages almost just over, I should say, 2.5 takedowns per fight. And that's over 5 UFC fights, so pretty consistent with those takedown numbers. Francisco Prado, on the other hand, 20 years old, undefeated, last fought in December, 100% finish rate, 5 KO, TKOs, 6 submissions. Unsurprisingly, very explosive, good power, a bit wild, a bit uncontrolled. That doesn't surprise me from a very young fighter, a 20-year-old fighter. He's one of those fighters who only throws significant strikes, right? Doesn't really use a jab. Like Zahn mentioned, sort of that regional scene type of style. He has forward pressure again, very aggressive in his style. I've seen him land takedowns as well. I've seen him have aggressive ground and pound to go along with it. Plus that submission ability that I mentioned before by way of his finishes. But I got to think that Jamie Mullarkey is the much smarter pick here. Francisco Prado is filling in for Nasrat Haqparast on about 1 month notice, so that should be enough time. But Jamie Mullarkey, I think, again, is just the way more experienced fighter here. Prado can definitely be explosive, but I think that Mullarkey is much more refined as a fighter. Mullarkey has been in there against much stiffer level of competition. I can expect a much more complete level of striking from Mullarkey, and I can expect Mullarkey to take Prado to deep waters that he hasn't really faced before. Prado has never been to a decision, as an example. Again, Prado has that explosive power threat. And if we're talking just betting and analyzing fights, we saw that explosive power threat cash in a couple of weeks back when Gregory Rodrigues lost to a newcomer. That could happen here, right? But I'm still going to go with the smarter pick, and I feel like the smarter pick is Jamie Mullarkey by far, especially at minus 270. That's not too bad at all, unless you really believe in Francisco Prado and that power ability. But again, I'm going to go with Jamie Mullarkey to get this one done. I feel pretty comfortable about that pick.
Yeah, Mullarkey, you got to like the fact in this fight, he's going to have the stronger strength of schedule. He's fought the much better guys. And a big thing for Mullarkey in this spot is the cardio. He has really good cardio. He can go 3 rounds, no problem. He's not going to slow down. He actually picks it up as the fight goes on, as the other fighter slows down. So he has a lot of things going for him. But as far as the visual, man, I'm not impressed with this guy, Jamie Mullarkey. He's really not that good. Like he's okay in every area. He has some grappling, but I think that pace that he puts on fighters in that second, third round is what he's really good at. Now in this fight, I think that Francisco Prado, just doing research on this guy. This guy's dangerous. Heavy hands. He has knockout power. He's looking to finish. He's not trying to go 3 rounds. He's looking to either knock you out on the feet, or he's looking to get this to the mat, transition, choke you out, take your back, or even just ground and pound. This guy is not trying to go 3 rounds. The concern is, as the fight goes on, he could slow down, and that's as we know, Mullarkey does well in those situations. But I'm gonna actually take a chance with this underdog. I think the power this guy has could be an issue. Mullarkey should obviously get this done. He's fought the far better guys. He's the more tested guy. But I'm just going to take a chance on the underdog at these odds. I think the fight should be a lot closer. And I think the power that he brings to the fight, and he's looking for that finish. Mullarkey can get knocked out. So I'm going to go with Francisco Prado to win the fight, or at least get the first 2 rounds.
All right, fight number 6. We are looking at Shannon Ross taking on Kleydson Rodrigues. Shannon Ross, newcomer from the Dana White Contender Series. What's interesting is that he actually lost that fight. That was back in August. Not a bad striker, uses his jab to set up decent combinations, decent overhand right as well, good straight punches in general, good consistent pace as well. He was a bit overwhelmed in that Dana White Contender Series fight. Doesn't really have the best striking defense, though he does keep his hands up. And he can be a little bit chinny. So, a few things you got to be worried about if you're Shannon Ross, especially taking on Kleydson Rodrigues, who had a split decision loss to CJ Vergara back in May, although almost everyone had Kleydson Rodrigues winning that fight. Kleydson Rodrigues very comfortable in the stand-up. He has a sharp striking, good power as well. So, Shannon Ross got to be careful with that. Kleydson Rodrigues has a good jab, good solid kicks, good fakes and feints, pretty solid, pretty patient on the feet, I should say. He can also be pretty dynamic and explosive as well. His technique overall is pretty clean, and he's also was able to land a few takedowns in his debut. I wouldn't say that's a strong part of his style, but it's always good to see that a fighter does have some IQ there. Otherwise, expect him to be that Muay Thai type of guy that's going to keep it on the feet. You got to think Shannon Ross is in this fight probably only because he's fighting out of Australia. He's not a bad fighter, but again, he lost in his Dana White Contender Series fight, and there's just nothing that really stands out about his game. Shannon Ross, from what I'm seeing, pretty one-dimensional. Want to keep it on the feet. In that one-dimensional, nothing really special. So I do think that Kleydson Rodrigues is the much better striker here, sharper, more of a power threat, more diverse, and actively uses those kicks, as a part of his game. Whereas I don't feel like Shannon Ross really does that effectively. I don't think the ground game on either side is going to matter, but Rodrigues ultimately should get it done on the feet. Could even get a finish here. So I like Kleydson Rodrigues in this spot. I think he gets it done.
Yeah, I'm on Kleydson all day on this fight. I know Shannon Ross. I know the threats he brings to the fight, but Kleydson is a smart fighter, really good IQ. I thought he won his last fight against Vergara. MMA decision agrees with me. They thought that he was the fighter that should have got the decision in that one. But in that fight, it showed he was really tired, but he still did what he needed to do to score to win that round, even though he got robbed. In this fight, he's going to go to the takedowns. Shannon Ross does not have the best takedown defense. Kleydson has really good takedowns. He has he has a good top game, and even on the feet, I could see Ross getting some points on the feet because Ross is, I think, is a technically a good boxer. But I think at points in the striking, Klaydson's going to hurt him. And Ross, he's chinny. This guy's been dropped multiple times in fights. Um, I could see Kleydson getting a finish here. So I'm going to go Kleydson to get the win, and I'm pretty confident he gets it done here.
Fight number 7, Josh Culibao, Melsik Baghdasaryan. Really close featherweight fight here. Josh Culibao is on a 2-fight winning streak, 3-fight unbeaten. He had a split decision win to Sung Woo Choi back in June. Solid stand up from him. He's going to mix it up well. He has good striking diversity. He has that decent calf kick as well. His movement is decent, and I like his good consistent pace. Also look for some switch stands from him, solid in and out movement to go along with that. He has a solid clinch. He has some wrestling, although it doesn't really have any takedowns, or sorry, it doesn't have any takedowns landed in 4 UFC fights. So I won't say rely on that by any means. Otherwise, again, he's gonna kind of keep you against the cage, clinch you, kind of score points in that dirty boxing, hold you against the cage type of style. He has a BJJ background as well, in case it does get to the ground. So he is a pretty well-rounded fighter. But he is, again, going to be somebody that solid stand up, solid movement, solid diversity, and he's going to keep going, right? Very tough competitor. Melsik Baghdasaryan, 7-fight winning streak. He hasn't fought in a while as well. November 2021 was his last fight. He's a southpaw on the feet. He's going to push a really good pace, almost like a controlled aggression. He's really good at implementing that style. He's very light on his feet. He's a quick striker with quick kicks, good jab, good power, very high level kickboxer. Good in the clinch situations as well. He's going to throw very effective and explosive elbows and knees in those situations. Nasty left elbow, especially. He can control his opponents against the cage, and again, like Culibao, take that sort of clinch you against the cage type of approach. But he is very much a kickboxer, right? He does have some takedown ability. He does have decent takedown defense. I mentioned a clinch style as well, but very much prefers to be a kickboxer. For Melsik Baghdasaryan, the big red flag with him is that cardio has been a bit concerning for him in the past. My anticipation for this fight stylistically is a style where I don't see Melsik Baghdasaryan having huge concerns with cardio. We look at Josh Culibao in several UFC fights at this point. His significant strikes landed per minute is not that high. He's not somebody that's going to push a heavy pace. I do think that this will be a striking match. This could be a tough matchup, as the odds definitely indicate. But I like Melsik Baghdasaryan. I think he was even a slight underdog at one point. It looks to be a pick'em now. I like Melsik Baghdasaryan to get it done. I feel like his striking is a little bit more of a threat. I feel like he has the higher level striking, like I mentioned, more pure with his striking as a kickboxer, more accurate, lands more. I feel like he's just as tough. Again, Culibao doesn't really push a high pace, so I don't anticipate the cardio red flags being a huge issue for either fighter, really. So again, I mean, I could see close fight, split decision type of fight, maybe, especially with Josh Culibao fighting at home. But Melsik Baghdasaryan is going to be my pick.
Yeah, I like your breakdown on that one, Harris, man. You pretty much hit everything. Culibao has the boxing in this fight, but overall kickboxing, you got to give that to Melsik, and we're gonna get a kickboxing fight. And Culibao is kind of he can't really handle the kicks well, the leg kicks well. he doesn't really have a defense for it. And Melsik is a guy that attacks that region continuously. So I'm going Melsik, man, because we're gonna get a kickboxing fight. And Culibao, yeah, he got that win against Choi, but Choi is Choi is not who he thought he was, right? Like in Choi's last fight, he kind of got exposed, and so that win is not as good as it was when it happened. I think Melsik is the better striker, the more technical guy. Over 3 rounds, I think Melsik's going to be the one to get the decision here. As you know, he's the more active striker, but when you watch him fight, he's patient. And Culibao wants, when he was fighting those other guys, he's wanting to counter these guys. Melsik's not going to make those mistakes that those other that Choi and forgot the other guy that he fought. But I don't think Culibao is going to be able to win those striking exchanges because Melsik's not gonna give in to him to allow him to get countered. He's going to use those kicks. He's going to use those kicks to enter. I see Melsik winning, being the better striker. So I got Melsik pulling out the win here.
All right, final fight of our prelims. We are looking at Tyson Pedro taking on Modestas Bukauskas. For Tyson Pedro, 2-fight winning streak. He beat Harry Hunsucker back in August. Decent active jab. He's very technical. A lot of fakes and feints with solid movement. He's especially good at fighting from range. Good calf kick. He can be explosive. 9 wins, all of them via finish. Physically strong, can definitely play that clinch game as well, and he's good on the ground. Don't expect takedowns to be an active part of his game, but he has shown me an ability to land takedowns, to have good top control, to have some grappling ability as well. Just a solid overall fighter, solid light heavyweight. We know he took some time off a few years back, but 2-fight winning streak now and looking to keep up that momentum fighting at home. Modestas Bukauskas making his way back to the UFC after a 2-fight winning streak in Cage Warriors last year. Good movement, stick and move type of style, a little bit of switch stance as well. A lot of kicks included in his attack, decent jab usage as well. His hands aren't bad by any means. A lot of fakes and feints, trying to set things up. Cardio isn't an issue as well either. He's been in 5-round fights in Cage Warriors. I think even his last fight, I think, was a round 4 fight, if I'm not mistaken. He has the good tools, good speed for the division, decent enough stand-up, good work rate as well. I think the thing with Bukauskas, though, is that he kind of lacks direction in his game plan. It's not that he's inconsistent per se, but it's that he doesn't really have anything about his game that stands out, in the fight itself. It doesn't look like he has a definitive game plan on how he wants to win that round or how he wants to win the fight. I feel pretty comfortable picking Tyson Pedro here. I'll say that. Again, just not really much of a threat in Bukauskas' game. I don't think that Bukauskas is going to be a takedown threat. He's not the most active striker to go along with it. And if we're looking at that kind of technical sparring type of style, I think we'll see Tyson Pedro just at a higher level there. I think that Tyson Pedro just a bit more deliberate with his attack. Again, I'm just saying that that's sort of the opposite of some of the things with Bukauskas. More intentional with that jab, more intentional with the calf kicks, more than likely physically stronger between these two fighters as well. I wouldn't say there's any clear advantages for either fighter on this one, though. So I'm not going to rush to put Pedro on a parlay, for example, but I do like Tyson Pedro being pretty much better everywhere in this fight, unless I'm just completely misreading this. Again, I'm not going to rush to put it on a parlay, but I do feel pretty comfortable making Tyson Pedro my pick.
Yeah, I'm with you. I can't trust Pedro on a parlay, man, because even though he should get this done, I could see him losing this fight. So this is a tough fight. I think Pedro should have the better striking with the power, the fight ending ability. The ground game has a big advantage. He's fighting at home. Bukauskas did really bad in the UFC, and then he went to Cage Warriors, fought 2 scrubs, and now he's back in the UFC. So he still hasn't gotten a win, or he actually has a win versus what's that guy's name? The guy that fought Pereira. He's not on the UFC either. Let me check. Modestas. So yeah, he did beat Andreas Michailidis in a fight that Michailidis was actually winning, and then something happened. He couldn't continue. But in this fight, I think Pedro gets it done, but you can't feel confident in this fight because if he does not knock him out or if he does not go to his wrestling, this is going to be a really close fight. If this just stays on the feet and Pedro doesn't get the bomb or the big shot, Bukauskas is going to make this really close, and he could probably win the fight. But Pedro at home in a close fight, the judges are going to lean him. So I'm going to go Tyson Pedro. More avenues to win the fight. He has fighting and power. He can knock him out. He has really good kicks, and he has a big advantage in the grappling, the submissions. He's a black belt, so I like Tyson Pedro here to get the win here.
Let's move on to our main card. First fight, we're looking at Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. Jimmy Crute, 2-fight losing streak. It's been over a year since his last fight. Again, another one of those fighters that just has not fought in a while, appearing on this pay-per-view card. He got knocked out by Jamal Hill at that time. We know he had a nasty leg injury earlier in that year as well, so the time off between fights doesn't really surprise me. Good striking from Jimmy Crute, good calf kick. He's willing to engage and trade shots. He's tight in the stand-up, stays in the pocket, keeps those hands up, good head movement, good counter striking. Just a really good overall technical striker. Really good wrestler as well, good takedowns. We look at his takedown numbers there. What stands out, of course, is that 75% on the accuracy side of things, in addition to almost 5 takedowns per fight. Good body lock, stays with it, chain wrestles, good grappling as well. BJJ brown belt, and it was very comfortable against Paul Craig in their fight, who has proven, of course, to be a very tricky grappler against a lot of people. Taking on Alonzo Menifield, who's on a 2-fight winning streak, who beat Misha Serkinov back in October. Decent overall movement, a lot of level changes, some in and out movement from him as well early on in the fight. He's going to keep his hands up defensively. But, ultimately for Menifield, look for him to rely on his offense, right? Likes to throw those overhand hooks, has that touch of death type of power. Look for him to be the fighter coming forward and almost implementing a bit of a stalking type of style. Has a strong clinch, has strong wrestling, just very strong in general. Of course, his physique will speak to that. A lot to like on paper with Alonzo Menifield, but of course, his biggest his biggest concern, I should say, is that cardio tank. It's a huge red flag of his. This is a more of a tricky fight than it would appear. I think there is a lot of value on Alonzo Menifield. I think there is a legitimate chance for Menifield to get the knockout. Jimmy Crute fights in the pocket, like I mentioned. Jimmy Crute is not afraid to engage. He's shown me he can be chinny, which is very concerning in this fight. On top of that, Alonzo Menifield has been on a bit of a streak, so you got to imagine his confidence and in his ability is pretty high, or is higher than it's been in a long time. We know that both of them can wrestle. We know that Menifield has good takedown defense, and of course, we know Menifield is physically strong. Jimmy Crute does have amazing takedown accuracy, like I mentioned, but I think that physical strength of Alonzo Menifield tells me that a lot of this fight can occur on the feet. But here's the thing: I think that Jimmy Crute is a lot more well versed on the feet, a lot more capable on the feet. Of course, outside of the power threat that Alonzo Menifield is, I do think that Jimmy Crute should be able to do more on the feet. Because Alonzo Menifield kind of loads up on that power, I do think that Jimmy Crute will be able to avoid it. So I like Jimmy Crute here on the comeback. Of course, very dangerous fight. I'm not interested in parlaying this one. But maybe if I were to make a lotto ticket or a kind of a long shot parlay, I think this fight would be on there, and Jimmy Crute would be my pick for that long shot parlay. But Jimmy Crute, yep, again, is going to be my pick for this light heavyweight scrap.
Yeah, so this is one of those fights where Jimmy Crute, this guy can get the takedowns, man, but he's not will he take it to the mat, or will he want to stand with Alonzo Menifield? And I'm not sure, man. A lot of times this guy just keeps it standing when he does have a wrestling advantage. I think this fight's going to be a fight where on the feet, Menifield has a big advantage on the feet. He's a far better striker. Crute looks really bad in the striking area. And as far as the wrestling goes, Menifield does have wrestling. Crute has wrestling. But I'm not sure if Crute's going to take it there. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do it consistently. I'm not impressed with Crute, man. I'll be honest. I'm not impressed with Crute. So I'm gonna have to go with the underdog, Alonzo Menifield, to get this one done. I think he does enough to keep it on the feet, or Crute just keeps it on the feet and wants to have a kickboxing fight. And I think Alonzo's gonna hurt him in that area. I think he's a far better striker out of the two. So Alonzo Menifield is my pick.
Second fight of our main card, Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. Justin Tafa beat Harry Hunsucker. That was all the way back in December 2021. He's 2-3 in the UFC. One of those sort of one-dimensional heavyweights, all things considered. Big power, sneaky short hook. He had that nasty head kick finish in his last fight as well, which is always worth pointing out. Otherwise, very flat-footed, doesn't really offer much elsewhere. Though I will say he does have some ground IQ, but again, just one-dimensional, looking for that big power. Parker Porter, on the other hand, lost to Gelton Almeida back in May. He's going to want to keep it on the feet as well. He's going to look to come forward, look for those big striking opportunities. He's going to use his jab regularly, use the setup combinations. He's not afraid to engage at all either. He's going to look for that clinch dirty box combination. Don't be surprised if it leads to a takedown or two as well. We look at his numbers there, just over a takedown per on 30% accuracy. When I think about this fight, because I don't want to spend too much time on it, it's not really the highest level fight. I think about Justin Tafa versus Jared Vanderaa. And I saw Jared Vanderaa, a tough heavyweight who can take the shots from Justin Tafa and still be busier on his end. A tough heavyweight who can implement pressure and a clinch game as he needed to do. Back to Tafa being sort of one-dimensional, didn't really have an answer for that type of approach. I think that Parker Porter has a lot of those tendencies. I think Parker Porter is going to be the more active striker here. I think Parker Porter is going to continue to come forward. He may even, actively attempt to land that takedown, or again, like I said, put himself in that situation where he's going to get the clinch on you and put you in dirty box situations. And I can see him trying to do that immediately, maybe to avoid Justin Tafa's power early in the fight and try to wear on his tank a little bit. The question, of course, is whether, because we know Vanderaa has a chin, can Parker Porter handle that power? Parker Porter has been knocked out a couple of times in his career amongst the 7 losses. I want to go for Justin Tafa. It's the home crowd. I want to believe his power is going to connect. Again, Parker Porter has been knocked out in the past, but I think Parker Porter as an underdog is super live here. Stylistically, I can see a very frustrating fight for Justin Tafa, and I can see Parker Porter pulling it out. Not only is this heavyweight beware, but this is a very low level fight. I never thought I'd see myself in a situation where I'm picking Parker Porter, but here we are. Parker Porter is going to be my pick to get this one done.
Yeah, the UFC put this on the main card because they think someone's getting knocked out, because there's no way this should be here on the main card with the with the fights before this. So this is clearly here because they think someone's getting knocked out. So I'm going to go with Justin Tafa getting the knockout. You can't feel confident on either side. Justin Tafa, I think, in my opinion, is the better striker, the better boxer. I think Porter's the better overall fighter because he does include higher activity. He does have the grappling advantage, and the activity, to the pace that he has, he can hold you against the cage. But I just think in the open area, I just think that Tafa can knock Porter out. So I'm going to go with Justin Tafa here to pull it off. But again, this is a 50-50 fight. Harris, I understand why you're going with Porter. Anyone can win this fight. You can't feel confident. These guys are really, really low level. But I'm going to roll the dice with the Justin Tafa here to somehow get a counter and get a knockout.
Third fight of our main card, Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown. Really good welterweight scrap here. We have Randy Brown, who's on a 4-fight winning streak. Tall, long striker, switch stance fighter as well. Good long front kicks, good long jab. We know Randy Brown's very explosive, very dynamic too. He has quick combinations. He has solid movement. He has a high finish rate. 11 of his 16 wins via finish, 6 KO, TKO, 5 submission. He's been good, since his amateur career at finding those guillotine and rear naked choke opportunities as well. So that could always be a threat in this fight. Stylistically, he's very methodical, good IQ, stays composed, good movement, good timing, just a really good overall fighter, and I think a legitimate prospect in this welterweight division, taking on another legitimate prospect, Jack Della Maddalena, who's on a 13 fight winning streak and who is 3-0 in the UFC now. He beat Danny Roberts back in November. He has clean striking. He has a good jab, has good combinations. The movement looks clean. Good in and out movement and good striking IQ as well. A lot of good things to say about both of these fighters. Jack Della Maddalena sets things up really well. Has a judo background, used to play rugby, so it's going to speak to some of his toughness, some of that clinch, potentially even some of those takedown opportunities. But he's very much a fighter that likes to keep it standing. He has good wrestling IQ from what I've seen, good scramble situations when needed. Like I said, though, prefers it standing with really good power. 11 of his 13 wins are via KO TKO, including his last fight. So look out for that. This welterweight fight ultimately was the fight that I had circled when I was getting ready to review this card. What makes this fight extremely interesting is that the odds. Randy Brown is a huge underdog. And I have Randy Brown pegged as one of those dark horse type of fighters in the division. Maybe not the fighter you would think is the best in the division, sort of in the same way you wouldn't think Jamal Hill is the best light heavyweight, but somehow the fighter who has the belt now, right? Not to say Randy Brown is gonna be champ in the next year or so, but he is one of those dark horse type of fighters who can definitely put a string of fights together, in my opinion. I think he has the skill set to do so. But Jack Della Maddalena, of course, is a great prospect, is fighting at home, is a future contender, potentially. I don't know. I mean, to me, this is a high level striking match. To me, this is a 50-50 fight in a lot of ways. I think Randy Brown is going to have a lot of key physical advantages that we know he's going to use in his favor, right? 4 inches in height, 5 inches in reach as well. Where I think the biggest concern lies for Randy Brown is that he has been a bit chinny in the past. And we know that Jack Della Maddalena has big power. But I mean, I'm going to be honest. I think these odds are too good to pass up on the dog. I think Randy Brown is going to show up. I think he shows up to the level of competition that he's fighting. Even if this is a 60-40 fight in Jack Della Maddalena's favor, minus 330, I think is way too steep, right? I think to me, Jack Della Maddalena, apologies for the struggles there. I think he should maybe be minus 130, minus 150 at most. So again, to see him at minus 330, I think the value is just too good on the other side for what will otherwise be a great close matchup. So I'm going with the big underdog. I'm hoping this is one of my picks of the year. Randy Brown, I think, is going to get it done.
I don't know, man. I was actually leaning Randy Brown, and then I did some more research on this fight, and I was looking at the fighters that Randy Brown is looking good against, right? So his last 4 fights, Trinaldo, Williams, Gooden, Oliveira. I'm pretty sure Jack can beat those guys too, right? And probably in a more decisive way. He's going to a decision with Trinaldo, split decision with Chaos, decision with Gooden. And he choked out Alex, right? Old Alex. And then he got knocked out by Vincente Luque. So I think that Randy Brown, yes, is looking good. He could look good early in the fight with his reach. He's going to have the reach advantage, the experience. He's been in there with better guys. But I think at some point, Jack's going to touch him. Brown is not doesn't have the best chin. I'm not saying he's getting knocked out by guys, but he has been finished in the UFC. And I think against a guy like Jack, I think eventually, as the fight goes on, I can see Jack getting his time in, getting his boxing going. And I think as far as the wrestling, I think Jack can even turn to his wrestling. I think he might have the wrestling. He will have the wrestling advantage in this spot as well. So I'm going to go Jack Maddalena here to pull it out. But as far as the odds, these odds are crazy. There's no way Jack should be this big of a favorite. It's disrespect to Randy Brown. Because Randy Brown, in my opinion, I think this is a 55-45 fight. So I give Randy Brown it's almost 50-50 for me, but I think at some point Jack's gonna land here, but it's a close fight. I would not put this on parlays. I would not treat this like a normal minus 300. I don't think it's one of those, but I think Jack does win for the channel.
All right, let's move on then to our co-main event of the evening. Yair Rodrigues, Josh Emmett. This one for the the interim, I should say, featherweight title, if I'm not mistaken. Yair Rodrigues beat Brian Ortega back in July. That was via injury, though, so not really a win. But the raised victor there. That fight lasted 4 minutes, but not really much to pull from it. He has good movement, really good diverse overall striking, very light on his feet with crafty footwork. Really sharp calf kick, really good kicks in general. He's going to concede to being the fighter fighting from the outside. He's going to use his lateral movement often. He has a really good consistent pace in terms of his style. His combinations are really good. The striking diversity is up there. The distance control is up there again as that fighter fighting from the outside. He can also switch stance, so expect to see that included amongst everything that I'm mentioning in terms of his game. Takedowns are not really a part of his game. I wouldn't say his takedown defense is amazing. So not to say a one-dimensional fighter, but definitely a fighter that specializes in one thing, and that is a very diverse striking skill set. And he's going up against Josh Emmett, who is more well-rounded. 5-fight winning streak. He beat Calvin Kattar back in June. That was a split decision win. Now, a lot of people had Calvin Kattar winning that fight, or at least a very close fight. Even his unanimous decision win against Dan Ige, a few scorecards had Dan Ige winning that fight. I think it's important to mention that because Josh Emmett finds himself in close fights, right? I mean, on top of him finding himself in close fights, he seems to do enough to get the decision in his favor every time, which is also equally important, equally as important to note. In terms of his style, he has good power. He has decent movement. He likes to come forward, throws those hooks, 3, 4, 5 hooks in a row at times. Underrated punching speed, really tough, always willing to engage. He's going to take one to give one. And again, I mentioned he's more well-rounded. He is a college wrestler, so he still has that in him, but it's not an active part of his game at all. Expect him to keep it standing. Just a high-level fighter, though, right? He's patient, he's aggressive, and this is going to be a really interesting fight because yes, it should stay on the feet, but it's completely a clash of styles. I am part of that crowd that thought that Josh Emmett lost to Calvin Kattar, and I think that fight could actually be a good blueprint for how this fight could go, with a key difference or two. So similarly to the Calvin Kattar fight, I think that Yair Rodrigues will have better movement than Josh Emmett, especially laterally. Also similar to the Calvin Kattar fight, I think Yair Rodrigues will land more than Josh Emmett. The difference is that stylistically, I believe Yair Rodrigues provides a bit more of an amplified version of some of the things that Kattar was doing well, right? So I do see Rodrigues being a little bit trickier with that lateral movement, with the diverse striking. It can mean, off-timed kicks, punches, combinations from different angles, things that Josh Emmett's not really going to expect, whereas Kattar's attack was a bit more straightforward, a bit more jab-oriented. I also think that Yair Rodrigues will be able to throw even more than Calvin Kattar was, at least in terms of more meaningful shots, maybe not more total strikes. But again, more importantly, I think the kicks specifically will be something that won't really allow Josh Emmett to get going, like he was able to do to Kattar. Again, Kattar was still landing, but Emmett was able to kind of go through those jabs because they were fairly straightforward. Ultimately, I like Yair Rodrigues here. I think this is a high-level striking match, but I think that Yair's dynamic striking is going to work more effectively than Josh Emmett's fairly basic style. So Yair Rodrigues, I think, is going to get it done. I think he's going to get his hand raised and get that featherweight trap.
I'll be quick. I'm going Josh Emmett in this spot. I agree. Yair has the more technical striking, but the issue is the last time Yair has fought a guy that has the wrestling like Emmett was when he fought Frankie Edgar, and we all saw what happened in that fight. He got ragdolled. He got finished in that fight. I think Emmett should go to the wrestling in this fight. I think Rodrigues doesn't have any takedown defense at all, and he's content at pulling guard. And I think that's a route that Emmett can likely go to win this fight. But he wants to stand there. He wants to bang with you, right? And that's another thing that I think that he can exploit is the power. Not many guys can take his shots, man. Like he gets one knockdown. He has 11 knockdowns in the UFC or 10 knockdowns, and he has 10 or 11 fights in the UFC. So this guy gets a knockdown on his opponents in one time in every fight. I don't think Yair can take his power. 5 rounds, I think at some point Josh Emmett's going to connect. And if he's having an issue, again, I think the takedowns will be easy if he just goes for them. Yair does not really have great takedown defense. He hasn't fought in a wrestler since Frankie Edgar, and in that fight you saw what happened. So I like Josh Emmett in this spot here to pull it out. Underdog. I'm going to go with him here to get a win.
All right, so then main event time, we have Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski. Of course, this one for the lightweight title. Volkanovski going for 2 straps. Islam Makhachev, of course, the newly crowned champ after beating Charles Oliveira. We know that Islam Makhachev has that dominant win over Charles Oliveira back in October, like I mentioned. He's a southpaw, of course, combat sambo style, a good boxer as well, good jab, good level changes, good fakes and feints. He's really patient in the stand-up, very diverse and technical as well. And don't underestimate his power either. He's going to set up takedowns pretty well, to the combo sambo script, like I mentioned. Once he gets you down, he's going to dominate in a lot of different ways, right? Great top position, really good ground and pound. He's always trying to implement, bettering his position, improving his position, good submission attempts, everything that you'd kind of expect. He's the complete package defensively as well. Good takedown defense, good submission defense. That last fight with Charles Oliveira really showcased how physically strong he is. I mean, Charles Oliveira, we know, is one of the best grapplers that the UFC's ever seen. And his efforts were nothing for Makhachev, right? Makhachev was too strong with that top control to really let anything happen. Volkanovski, equally as complete as a fighter. We know he beat Max Holloway back in July. A lot of fakes and feints in his attack, especially early in the fight. He's going to try to take his time, find the reads, find the timing, use those leg kicks regularly. Really try to act as a counterpuncher, try to get you to bite. Again, great timing to my earlier point. He has really good combinations to go along with it, and everything is controlled. High level of technique. Don't underestimate his movement. He can fight really effectively from the outside. We know he has an iron chin. We know that he began his career as a middleweight. We know his rugby background, of course. So we know he can take a shot. And he's no slouch on the ground. I mean, almost 2 takedowns a fight. Respectable, 73% takedown defense. But more importantly, he knows how to transition and scramble and get his way back up if he is taken down. I'll kind of go right into the prediction because, I'm describing 2 complete fighters. Definitely 2 pound-for-pound fighters. Definitely going to be a great matchup. I mentioned the weight class where Volkanovski began his career at. I mentioned the rugby background. And I bring those up to make sure that we don't think much of the 10-pound move up for Volk. He should be okay from a size perspective. We know that he's not tallest. It's going to be a 4-inch height disadvantage for Volkanovski. But I think he'll be okay from that, physical perspective. I have to go with Makhachev, though, for a few analytical reasons. Stylistically, I think Volkanovski, like I mentioned, fights from the outside, has kind of underrated movement in a lot of ways. But I think stylistically, that's actually going to give Makhachev the opportunity to come forward, to initiate takedown situations. And I mentioned Volkanovski, not amazing takedown defense. It's good, but it's not amazing. 73%, he can definitely be taken down. I believe that Makhachev will successfully land takedowns. And I mean, again, Volkanovski is strong, but you get taken down with a Dagestani as strong as Makhachev on top of you. And like we saw with Charles Oliveira, I think Makhachev will just be able to successfully implement that top control and string rounds together in his favor. If not, a la Brian Ortega, find that opportunity for a submission. We know Volkanovski's tough. And I think for Volkanovski to win, he's going to have to outclass Makhachev on the feet. It's not to say that it's not possible, but I do believe the striking will be close. In a lot of ways, I mean, I look at the odds minus 410 and you say, wow, that's insane. How can you do that to Alexander Volkanovski? That is pretty disrespectful for a pound for pound fighter. But in other ways, it's completely understandable because analytically, I like Makhachev in this spot to retain his title. I think it's just, too many analytical advantages in his favor. So I'm going Islam Makhachev to get it done. No slight to Alexander Volkanovski at all.
Yeah, Islam all day, man. Like no wasting time here, man. Like Volkanovski, this is like Rocky if he wins, right? But let's be honest, he's not winning this fight. Like he's not winning this fight. Just put this guy Islam on your parlays. He's too big. Islam Volkanovski is gonna need the power to knock him out, and he kind of boxes with these guys. He doesn't really finish these guys with punches. And you watch the fight versus Chad Mendes. I know it's a while ago, but you got to factor he was able to get 3 takedowns. He just didn't have the top game of an Islam. And if Chad Mendes can get 3 takedowns, you think Islam can get 5. But obviously, things have changed. Volkanovski has gotten better, but he's always been a good wrestler. He came into MMA with wrestling. Islam, however, is always improving as well. I think at this point, the size, I think 155. I think there's a lot of guys in that division that would beat Volkanovski. I don't think he can just come in here and take the title, much less defend that same title in this deep division. It's a much deeper division than 145. 135 is deep, but 145 compared to 155, it's not even close. Islam gets it done. He makes it look easy, gets on top. He'll do it every round until Volkanovski quits. So I'm gonna go Islam Makhachev here to win this fight.
All right, with that tone, let's take it to Vegas then. Let's see how we feel. Firstly about underdogs, and then we'll get into parlays. I'll read the underdogs off, starting with the first fight. Elvis Brenner is the underdog in that one. Blake Bilder is the underdog in his fight. Elise Reed is an underdog. Don Shainis, Francisco Prado, Shannon Ross. Melsik Baghdasaryan is considered the underdog in that one. Modestas Bukauskas is the underdog. Alonzo Menifield, Parker Porter, Randy Brown, Josh Emmett, and Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah, I'm going with my boy, I'm going with my boy Melsik Baghdasaryan.
All right, Melsik Baghdasaryan there. My underdog pick, a little bit more ambitious than that, but obviously there's a lot more danger in that. I'm going Randy Brown as the big underdog again. I think he'll show up. And in terms of parlay action, who are you taking a look at? Who are you considering?
Okay, yo, let me go after you, man. Who you got?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go first. I like the first fight, Zubaira Tukhugov. I like Loma Lookboonmee. I like Kleydson Rodrigues, and I like Islam.
Okay.
I think you punctuated that point. So that's a 2.65. $100 will return a total of 265. For our bigger bettors, $200 will return a total of 531. And then for yours?
All right, I like Islam Makhachev. I like Kleydson Rodrigues, Loma Lookboonmee, and Zubaira Tukhugov, man. I like him as well.
And there you go. Matching parlays. So again, 2.65 on that one. I will read the number one more time. $100 will return 265. And for our bigger bettors, 250 will return a total of 664. So let's wrap it up on that note. This, of course, has been your UFC 284 Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski full card prediction video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our parlay? Who is your parlay, or who is on your parlay, I should say? Who is your underdog of the card? Who is your lock of the card? We definitely want to have all that conversation in the comments. So make sure you participate in that conversation. Otherwise, again, let's officially sign off. He goes by the name of Zahn. I go by the name of Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks, giving you UFC 284, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski full card predictions. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.